Hello and welcome back to Shanti Fine Arts. This Valentine's Day, if you're looking for an easy yet beautiful art project to do with your partner, I have really got you covered. I have this easy beginner's acrylic project for you and your partner to do. And without much ado, let's get started and see how we can do it. I have toned the canvas with burnt sienna, and on top of that I have made a very I have started off with toning the whole entire canvas, which is an 11 by 14 canvas panel with burnt sienna. And on top of that, I have drawn out my general image. Now, if you are scared of drawing, then not to worry. I have a traceable available and I will link it below in the video description. Just use the traceable and then use a transfer paper and get it on top of your canvas by the transfer paper method. I do also have a video showing how to do it, and I will link that in the video description as well. So once we have the image transferred or drawn on the surface of the toned canvas, we can get started. So I'm starting off with a combination of yellow and white in a part of the painting, and I will slowly fade it off to a brighter orange and then finally a brighter red, which is more like a magenta red. And I want a center area brightest and whitest, and then slowly fade out to yellow and then orange and then red. And finally the red will fade out into purple, as you will see in a little bit. And that's how I am laying the basic layer of the sky area. And you can see I am using crisscross motions when I'm laying down the paint so that they kind of get blended. And then I'm coming back with a mop brush and taking out any brush marks that I'm making in the process so that I get a more or less smooth sky. It is not very important to get it very smooth at the first layer because there will be multiple layers, and if you do not get something right in the first layer, you can always come back and add another layer and correct it. So it doesn't really matter much. Use a mop brush, use some crisscross strokes, and you should be good. As you can see, I'm still continuing on adding the sky areas and blending and getting the right tones. Once I have the sky generally, more or less generally blocked, I will draw the moon back again and then fill it out with titanium white. Now, while I was drawing out the moon, uh, or rather when I started painting on the moon, the basic sky area was still very slightly but still a little bit damp, which actually worked in my favor, and I picked up a little bit of color in the titanium white, so it's not straight white. But before that, let's lay on the hill area. For the hill area, I have first started with a bluish mauve colors, which is purple mixed with a little bit of blue and some white, to lay out the further layers, which are not very prominent. And then on top of that, I am coming back with a darker brownish purple, brown and purple mixed paint to paint out the layers of hills that are closer to our views, that are not so faded away. That ways you can create a lot of depth in your painting. So the backward layers are lighter and more mauvish, and the front hills are darker and has more brown mixed with the purple. That's the general idea. And if you have trouble laying out the horizon line straight, definitely use a scale ruler. You will see that I'll use a tape later to get a very straight sharp edge, and that is perfectly all right to do. Now comes the part of the water. Now, in the water part, I am first laying out a mix of purple with the burnt sienna. No, I'm sorry, purple with raw umber. I'm mixing up my color. And that is going to be the sides of the water. In the general
middleish area of the water, middleish as if that is a right correct term, but anyways, you understand what I mean. So underneath where the moon is, because of the reflection of the moon, that will be a lighter area. As we move out from the lighter area, there will be the darker area. So what I'm doing is I'm starting from the sides, which are darker and has more purple and brown mixed with it, and pulling that area inwards, and you will see that I will soon come back with lighter colors of yellow, orange, and white, and bring in the reflection of the moon in the center area. Now you see the moon is drawn out and I have started painting onto the moon. If you do it completely white, that is fine. If you do not get it completely white, it has a little bit of background colors, that's fine too. Moon is not perfect. Moon has a lot of blotches and splotches, and you will see that I'm soon going to make it like I'm doing now, adding some purples and browns and blotches, and use whatever kind of brush you want to make that impression. And once you have laid out the blotches, then come back with the prominent whites, or rather straight up titanium white, in thicker layers and lay them so that the impressions of the moon are more realistic. So that's how I'm making the moon. It will take a few layers of paint to get to the right brightness of the moon, because you want the darks to be dark and the lights to be light enough. That contrast will create a beautiful impression that you are looking for. Once the moon is done, we will go back to the reflection of the moon in the water. So it was important that we first laid out the moon, so to make sure that the water reflection comes out right. Now into the clouds, I'm adding a little bit of white, and then on the bottom side of the white, I'm adding some purple and reds. And after I have added in all those colors, I am using my filbert brush and fanning those out and kind of blending it into the background. I do want a little harsher edge of the clouds on the top part, but not on the bottom part. Now comes in the tape. This tape is an awesome tool if you want to have very sharp, straight edges like I want on this horizon line. You can see I'm first putting in some white, and then I will come back with the yellow and orange on top of the white to create that reflection of the moon in the water. First, I'm laying down straight up white and yellows and oranges, and later I am using the sharper edge of my, or rather the thinner edge of my brush, and pulling in the darker colors inside the lighter colors, and that ways you get the ripple effect. So lay down the plane flat, the lighter colors flat, and then come back with the darker colors and create the little streaky line marks, and that will create the effect of ripples in the water, and that will make the reflection of the moon far more realistic. I'm not looking for ultimate realism or hyperrealism over here, but a reflection should look like a reflection. That's all I feel about this painting. The further you go from the reflection, the edges get darker, and the closer underneath the moon, the reflection will be the brightest, so the whites will be the brightest over there. It will take a few layers of adjustments to get to the right lights and darks in the right areas, but once the water is laid, you need to let it dry completely, and then draw out the outer edge of the cove or the cave or whatever you want to call it with any color. It doesn't matter. I had some brown and purple on my palette. I'm drawing it out with that. If you have black, that will work too, because it will mostly get covered with the subsequent layers. And once you draw it out, now comes the use of rougher bristle brush, or I have actually used a brush that is fairly damaged at this point, and you can also use a sponge, and then we are going to create the block, the darker colors around it, the cave, to give it a more darker shadow or dark area of the cave that is farther away from the moon, that is not getting the light of the moon. You can see that I'm being absolutely messy about it, and that is the most fun part of this painting. You do not have to care at all about what brush strokes you're making, because you want that texture, you want those brush strokes that will make the cave or the rocks of the cave look like rocks. The texture is very important. You want that texture. So like I said, I'm using a fairly damaged brush to block in the colors. You can use a sponge or a bristle brush or whatever makes you feel comfortable to get this color. But whatever you do, I'm using colors raw umber, purple, crimson, and black, and a little bit of phthalo blue. So keep kind of close to these particular colors and get it pretty dark. Once the dark layers are laid, now I'm coming back with a bristle brush and tapping on some white paint. At this point, you can see that the paint underneath, the darker paint, is still a little bit damp, which works in our favor, and so that some of the whites actually get mixed with the darker colors, and it creates the impression that the light is fading out as you go inside or further away from the moon, in more inside the cave. And that is what the look is we are going for. So around the edge of the cove, you will have the white paints or lighter edges or lighter highlights, and as you move away, should get darker and darker. That's the key note around here. You can see I will come back with a little bit of the dark colors in between the light colors to make it look like the light is reflecting off some of the surfaces of the rocks while it is not reaching the other areas. Use as many layers of paint as you want to get the look that you're looking for. Um, it's totally up to you when you feel that it is done or when you feel that it's not done. Like for the moon, I feel that, oh, it needs to be a little more bright, but um, you might feel that, oh, it's fine, and you leave it at that, because moons is not a perfect white round shape. So there you can see I am adding a little bit of darker ripples in the farther layers of the water. This is not completely necessary, but I just thought that it will make it look a little bit more realistic and give a pop to the lighter areas. Adding some oranges around the brighter areas and brightening some of the lighter areas with more titanium white. Adding some of the shadows. So there you can see that I am adjusting the lights and darks continuously. Now comes to the figures of the lovey-dovey couple. I am first drawing it out with straight up white, and then on the outer edges I am adding a little bit of yellow ochre while the paint is damp, so that it kind of looks like the light is also reflecting off their bodies, but not so much because they are not made out of glass. Adding a little bit of shadow of the figures. First, the shadow is first with blue and purple, and then I'm coming back with a little bit of black. Once the shadows are done, I thought the painting needs a little bit of foliage, so I added a little bush, shrub, plant, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm not very conversant with the foliage terminology, but I thought that this completed the look of the painting and made it really, really touching. And there we come to the end of the painting. I hope you found it interesting, and let me know how enjoyable an experience it was to paint it with your partner or just paint it by yourself. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.